FM, Fargo-Moorhead.
Welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with our wonderful, talented Ag Director, Bridgette Readel. It's a Monday, Bridgette. It's cloudy. It's windy.
It's going to be okay, right, Dean? It's going to get a little bit better.
It is. I promise.
Okay.
I promise.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is storm number 2 of our LRC cycle. Remember, storm number 1 was that big low pressure anchored over the Great Lakes, which funneled in that cold air and dry conditions. I think we saw a little bit of precip from it. Storm number 2 of the LRC cycle, a windy, cold storm with not a lot of precip for our area. But boy, areas out to our west. I was taking a look at some data, and areas out in the western parts of North Dakota, specifically areas around Shell Lake, picking up 2 or more inches of precip. And that's much needed out there. Some of it fell as snow, but some much needed precip out in the western parts of the state, which is good news.
Well, I think it is, and it's probably not surprising they got 2 inches when you look at Alberta got 7. Certain parts of Montana got 5. So it diminished as it came eastward, but it was still really nice for everybody who picked up more snow than they expected.
Yeah.
And it's moisture. It's still good.
It's still moisture, correct. And we picked up only about 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch in and around the FM area. There was a little bit heavier amounts down towards Wahpeton, but we're only talking like 1/4, ½ inch. And areas just to the north of the Fargo-Moorhead area didn't receive much at all, trace of rain. From Grand Forks over towards Mayville, a little bit over in Lakes Country, about 1/10, 1/4 of an inch. Now, keep in mind, this same storm system will cycle back through throughout the winter, according to the LRC cycle. Now, will it cycle back in the exact same path it's taking now? More than likely, no, but it will be in our area, and hopefully the next time around it gives us a little more in the way of precip. But this storm system is kind of split into 2 pieces. Stronger pieces down to our south, which is bringing a lot of rain to some, again, much-needed areas of the drought-stricken southern plains. So it's good news around us. It's just not good news for us, unfortunately, in terms of the dry conditions.
Yeah, it's decent news. We'll take it. I know that this was just enough to maybe stop a few folks from combining today. If you were planning on baling corn stalks, it might be just a little bit too wet, and good Lord, it's far too windy. So it won't take long, and we'll be right back at finishing up the things we want to get done for this fall.
Right, exactly. And there's still some nice weather ahead. Don't discount this nice fall weather that we had over the past week. 77 on Sunday. We were 3 degrees away from a record high on Sunday. It was just incredible, and now we flipped the switch back into the 40s. We're not moving much today. We're stuck in the 40s with those west-southwest winds gusting over 30, and then we're pretty much dry the rest of the week into the upcoming weekend. There's a slight chance for a little bit of light rain as we head into Thursday as temperatures remain in the 50s. But other than that, it's a very dry forecast. It's a very dry start to this LRC cycle, which is it's a little disturbing for me. I was talking with Gary over the weekend. He's like, we've still got a few weeks left, hopefully before this resets, and let's hope we can get into a wetter part of the cycle. We'll see what pans out. At least there's storms coming on shore, but they're just a lot of them look to be falling apart. But again, that's what our models are predicting. We'll see what happens and what pans out. But when we come back, we're going to talk a few ag topics. We've got a great guest coming up today at 1:20. He is the president of Farm Bureau down in Florida, and we're going to be talking about Hurricane Ian later on this hour and how the hurricane has affected agriculture down in Florida, and what kind of effect is that going to kind of trickle down and have on the rest of the U.S. as well. So we'll have more on ag and a little bit of weather we'll talk about here coming up after ABC News break. Don't go anywhere.
From ABC News, I'm Richard Cantu. The National Association for Business Economics says all signs point to a recession, likely next year.
NABE President Julia Coronado says 2/3 of members report sales are dropping sharply and profits are being squeezed, all due to continued inflation pressures.
The biggest takeaway is that the economy is indeed slowing.
She says there are all signs a recession is on the horizon.
It is not yet in recessionary territory. It is still a positive number, but it has come down quite sharply from last year.
For now, though, hiring is strong and wages are still relatively high. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
The pandemic, with students taking classes remotely from home, did a number on math scores.
During pandemic years 2019 to 22, average math scores for 4th and 8th grade students had their largest decline in the history of the National Assessment of Educational Progress, between 5 and 8 points. That entity in the Federal Education Department has assessed what students know since 1969. It says the drop in math shows the importance of instruction and the role of schools. Reading scores declined, but not as sharply.
ABC's Chuck Sievertson. Chinese President Xi wrangled himself an unprecedented third term as leader of the Chinese Communists. Some observers believe Xi may be trying to become president for life. ABC News contributor, retired Marine Colonel Steve Ganyard says Xi has cemented his grip on power and removed any checks and balances that existed.
Look at Mao, look at even Putin. Anybody who centralizes power to the point where any dissent, any other voice that might be heard is suppressed tends to make very bad decisions over time. And that's what's scary for the rest of the world going forward with Xi Jinping in power.
At the party Congress, Xi called for self-reliance in technology and a stronger military. The World Series is set. Houston will meet Philadelphia in the Fall Classic beginning on Friday. You're listening to ABC News.
Paid for by government.com.
Have you heard? A recent stash of 1881 Morgan silver dollar coins has been found. These gorgeous 1881S silver dollar coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck. Only a limited quantity of these Morgan silver dollar coins are available. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone interested in silver coins. Just call government at 1-800-386-7194 and you are guaranteed a mint condition 1881S Morgan silver dollar featuring the iconic S mint mark of the San Francisco Mint. But with limited quantity, you must call now. These 1881S silver coins are still in uncirculated condition. That is 140 years of history you can hold in your hand. To learn more, call 1-800-386-7194. Call now and you'll receive a free American Coin Collector's Bonus Package, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-386-7194 now to secure your 1881S Morgan silver dollars before they sell out. That's 1-800-386-7194.
I'm David Chapman, and I'm a candidate for district judge. Our courts were designed to interpret and enforce the law. Our courts were not designed to write the law, which is the job of our elected legislators. In North Dakota, our judiciary carefully respects this special role, and I am a candidate because I wish to use my years of experience to continue that tradition of enforcing the law regardless of personal preference. If elected, I would be honored to serve.
Paid for by David Chapman.
Harvest is here, and that means we all need to be careful. Hello, this is Bethany Rentz with Irie Insurance. We want to make sure everyone up and down the valley has a safe and successful harvest. Take extra special care in your travels. Slow-moving combines, mud-covered roads, and debris are just a few things during harvest that can be dangerous. So take your time, watch your surroundings, and most of all, be patient and slow down. For more harvest safety tips, go to irieins.com.
You're protected and appreciated at Irie.
Do you suffer from stiff, achy, chronic knee pain? Have you been told you have arthritis? Is knee pain keeping you from enjoying your favorite hobbies? If so, the next 60 seconds could change your life. Please listen carefully. If we find you're a candidate for our unique approach, we'll do a trial treatment, and day one, you will know without a doubt if we can help you. Pick up the phone right now and call 701-353-2230. And best of all, we may be able to reduce and even eliminate your knee pain without pills, shots, or surgery. But due to limited capacity, you must call now at 701-353-2230. Hurry, call now to find out if you qualify for our program that is changing lives and helping people save time, money, and agony. Call now at 701-353-2230. You have nothing to lose, so call right now.
And welcome back to WDAY Weather and Ag in Focus. I'm Bridgette, Readel, Ag Director, along with Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, as we happily await the return of our very own Justin Storm, meteorologist. He'll be back soon.
Let's hope so.
New baby and all.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that's not the only new thing that's going on around here. Weather-wise, okay, so this was a big change, like you said yesterday, Dean. The weather was really great.
Right.
Now we've had a change. What's the rest of the week going to look like? And by the way, for folks who are listening, if you decide that you have a specific weather or ag question, why don't you give us a call, 701-293-9000. Dean, tell me about the weather for the week, please.
Well, I'll tell you what, after a near record high of 77 yesterday, I'm still trying to get over that. It was just absolutely beautiful. We're in the 40s today. And you know what? It's weather whiplash. We should be used to that this time of the year up here. And we're going to see things kind of mellow out over the next 5 to 7 days. Temperatures this week should average pretty close to normal for the first half of the week, as temperatures average right around 50. Winds will lighten up as this storm system departs to our north, and then we'll see another one slide in off the Pacific Northwest. Could give us some light showers as we head into Thursday, but the majority of that is sliding to the south again. And then as we head towards the end of the week, we'll see a nice warm-up with temperatures closer to 60. For Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So pretty quiet weather. It does look like things will start to turn after Halloween. So right now, Halloween for the trick-or-treaters looks okay for this time of the year. Not bad, no big storms. Following that, again, we could start to turn a little more unsettled. And again, let's hope so. Again, I wrote a nice article about the LRC, how it compares to last year. Remember last year, the start of the LRC was very stormy in October, and that led to, again, using the LRC and the cycling method, we ended up having a very wet fall, and that translated into a very snowy winter and a very wet spring around here. Right now, we've got drought conditions, and we're looking at a very dry start to the LRC cycle, only 0.16 of an inch, anywhere between 0.16 and a quarter inch of precip for the start of this LRC cycle. Last year, we had over 2 inches. That's a huge swing.
Wow.
That's a huge swing. Now, can we make that up before this cycle sets? We could, but it's going to happen here within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
It's going to have to happen fast.
Yeah, because
and
otherwise,
just go to Halloween for a sec.
Yeah.
Because don't we have a bet that I'm going to win?
Well, I chose 30s, and you chose 50s.
T-shirt weather.
T-shirt. I don't know if it'll be T-shirt weather. It's going to be somewhere in between the 30s and 50s. I bet you. That's the way it looks.
Well, we're
now.
going to see. But of course, because in my never to be less than competitive nature, I'm still going to win.
we shall see how that pans out.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So when I say I'm competitive, I also mean that I'm a stickler for as much accuracy as possible. And that leads us to one of the stories that's going on right now in ag, having to do with, well, Google. And most people go to Google because they want accurate information. Unfortunately, we're finding that's not necessarily the case right now. That what Google has done is they've created a new search engine that is supposed to bring us information about each recipe that we create and what are the carbon emissions that go along with each recipe.
Oh,
well,
boy.
Unfortunately, they're using old data and it's not as accurate as it should be. So for instance, when you're using a recipe that would contain beef, it's going to give you some old stats and it's going to make things look worse than they are. Remember, we're very, very efficient here in the U.S. at what we do. We're producing 18% of the world's beef with just 6% of the cattle. Well, what this is showing us in this Google search is that we're not showing the better impacts that we really have for greenhouse gas, which is going to lead some folks to be cautious about using more meat. Remember, if we as an entire country in the U.S. went to all of us following a vegan diet, it would only reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 1/3% globally. So that's a lot that has to change.
Do we have any fact checkers for Google? I mean, that shouldn't be like that. Somebody's not doing their job.
It shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're using old data, so what's happening is Google is being encouraged by many commodity groups. Just one of them would be National Cattlemen's Association, asking for an improvement in that information so that it's accurate, so people can make good choices with accurate information.
Right.
So that's just one thing that's going on.
All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Sorry, Dean. Just remember, Google is only as good as the information that you research.
Exactly.
You should always look more closely.
I tell
than just
people,
right on the surface.
do your own research. Dive in. Don't just.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're coming up on break now, but when we come back, we're going to have Florida Farm Bureau President Jeb Smith. He'll be joining us. We'll be talking about Hurricane Ian and how has it affected the Florida agriculture community, and what will that mean for the rest of the U.S.? If you have any questions for Jeb, shoot us a call here ahead of time, 701-293-9000. That's 701-293-9000. Or you can email us, weather@flagfamily.com or ag@flagfamily.com. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Harvest is here, and that means we all need to be careful. Hello, this is Bethany Rentz with IRE Insurance. We want to make sure everyone up and down the valley has a safe and successful harvest. Take extra special care in your travels. Slow-moving combines, mud-covered roads, and debris are just a few things during harvest that can be dangerous. So take your time, watch your surroundings, and most of all, be patient and slow down. For more harvest safety tips, go to IREINS.com.
You're protected and appreciated at IRE.
Attention North Dakota farmers. When asked if he supported federal crop insurance, Rick Becker, candidate for the U.S. Senate, said,
"No, I don't support any federal insurance."
It's clear that Rick Becker doesn't understand the importance of federal crop insurance to farmers and ranchers. Without federal crop insurance, North Dakota would be just one natural disaster away from wiping out our ag economy. It is also clear that Rick Becker has little respect for our farmers and ranchers.
The American farmer was the epitome of a rugged individual that was on their own, that made their way, and they've become barely anything more than a tool of the federal government.
Rick Becker will end federal crop insurance, and North Dakota farm families will pay the price.
North Dakota Strong, paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. Learn more at northdakotastrong.org.
Have you ever noticed that when the afternoon light hits your floors, you can see everything, including dust?
So much dust.
And that floor dust gets kicked up into the air, compromising the quality of air you and your family breathe.
Eesh.
Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper is the fast and easy way to clean your floors, with ultra-thick pads that trap and lock dust before it gets in the air. Just a couple minutes a day,
and dust is gone.
Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper. Proud partner of the American Lung Association.
Yeah, I'm so stressed. Our business is growing. We've got people all over now.
Ooma.
What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending Ooma and their all-in-one phone, video, and collaboration solution.
Ooma?
Yep. Switching to Ooma is a cinch. Just $24.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Visit Ooma.com. That's OOMA.com to learn more. Ooma. Smart communications for the smarter business.
Finding the right Medicare plan? Oof, no easy feat. Kind of like those dances my granddaughter loves making me do. But then I found Walgreens FindRx coverage. Lets you compare plans online, over the phone, or in person. Made Medicare shopping so easy. Plus, I found plans with low-cost copays. I can get down with that. Medicare annual enrollment ends December 7th. Find a plan that's right for you at walgreens.com/Medicare.
And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with our Ag Director, Bridgette Readel, and we'd like to welcome in the President of the Florida Farm Bureau, President Jeb Smith. Jeb, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Well, thank you all, and thank you for having me. It's a blessing to be here.
Boy, I'll tell you what, I mean, the whole nation was focused on Florida a few weeks back when Hurricane Ian came rolling through. How are things going down there currently?
I tell you what, there's a lot of restructuring going on, a lot of rebuilding, cleanup. anything that's typical of a hurricane. And I'll tell you what, folks began immediately thereafter. We actually saw, because of some of the hurricanes we've had in the past, that our system here in the state of Florida has actually been hardened quite well, especially from a utility standpoint and from a ability to be able to recover. Our legislature has done a good job of having some reserves that are capable of going in and spending some cash that's necessary for cleanup. But also our utility companies have spent a lot of money and been able to harden the system itself to be able to get in and out and to also to repair. So it's been very, very good. From an agricultural standpoint, a little bit different.
Now, in terms of agricultural standpoint, what would you say the farms that were hardest hit? Would it be dairy, beef, grain, or any one in particular, or all of them?
No, undeniably, our citrus industry was hit hard. Our dairies were hit significantly hard as well. I say that because, back in 2018, we had about 118 dairies in the state of Florida. We're down to 53. So, a lot of those were in the direct path of Hurricane Ian. So we've seen quite a reduction of our agricultural industry. Let me just give you some numbers in regard to what the University of Florida, our Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences has derived. That's our land grant institution here in the state of Florida. Their preliminary assessment of agricultural losses was outlined at somewhere between $787 million and $1.56 billion. So some significant amount of loss. I said that, citrus was definitely one that took a real brunt, and they did. Let me just give you some numbers on citrus industry that was our great behemoth here in the state of Florida for generations. Back in 1998, there were 248 million boxes of citrus harvested in the state of Florida. This last year, 2021-22, there were 40.3 million boxes harvested. And USDA crop forecast just came out about 2 weeks ago. It's going to be 28 million for the 2022-23 season. So you've seen a real reduction in crop production here in the state of Florida on the citrus side of things. And most people that aren't here in the state of Florida may not recognize that reduction is a result of a disease, a bacterial disease that's in our citrus. It's called citrus greening. That has definitely reduced our yields, our acreage, and also because of the storm as it came through, not just from wind and flood, but also from stress on these plants. They've actually had a lot of fruit drop. So it's not just necessarily the direct impact of the hurricane that was so devastating, but also just the continual results of just being totally stressed. Those plants have not come through extremely well. We've had other industries that were hurt as well. Our apiculture industry, the beekeeping was hit pretty hard in South Florida, not just from an infrastructural standpoint, but also from a feed standpoint. A lot of that, their foliage that those bees are accustomed to harvesting from has been damaged or destroyed. Likewise, our aquaculture industry, a lot of people may not realize, but they went through a loss of power and energy through some time and stress some of those fish. They have not recovered and have actually suffered a significant loss in the industry. Our cut foliage industry and some other things that aren't food and fiber here has also taken some hits. Cut foliage industry, especially up in the north part of the state, got a lot of wind and wind damage. We have a lot of shade cloth that produces some of our a lot of materials that are used in different arrangements. That it was just damaged and destroyed as well. Our ornamental horticulture industry, along with trees, had some that were damaged and blown over. Strawberries had not really begun to be planted very heavily, but did suffer some infrastructural loss, especially the plastic mulch that we laid down had been damaged and needed to be replaced. And so we're going to see, our vegetable industry had some losses as well. But I can tell you, it's not statewide. It was just in the path of the storm. Let me just give you an instance of how sensitive it was in regard to a distance. I live in Northeast Florida and got a lot of rain. At my house, I had 4.8 inches of rain precipitation as a result of Ian. My dad, who lives on the farm 3/4 of a mile away, had 11.1 inches of rain. Wow. So it's very, very, those bands were very close, and just south of him, not too far, was 20 inches of rain, about 50 miles south of him. So very sensitive to where you were specifically as to the effect that you got. And so it is with a lot of the industry. So Some vegetables were adversely affected, and some will need to be replanted, and some have already been replanted. I can tell you, it's kind of strange, but in Florida, it's Florida. Where I am in Northeast Florida, I live in St. Johns County. We had significant rainfall and flooding, and then turn around and we were irrigating a week later. So it's sometimes it's that way. And yet in South Florida, we still have some pasture that's still underwater and we're gonna have to supplemental feed some of these cattle. So it just depends on where you are and the effect that you had specifically.
Sure. And I know Bridgette's got a couple of questions. I've got one more follow-up with this, with the citrus. How much of effect do you think this will have nationally on prices for orange juice now? Because I know a lot of times during the winter months we have to worry about a hard freeze coming to Florida and harming the citrus crop. With this coming a little early, the damage of the citrus crop, how much effect do you think this will have on the price of orange juice throughout the country?
It's hard to say. The biggest thing about any kind of crop is not just quantity, but quality. And that's hard to tell. I mean, the effect on a tree, a perennial crop, is very difficult to say in the long run. I mean, we have estimates here of a 28 million box crop, but it could be better than that. It could be worse than that. We aren't even through the season yet. We haven't had any freeze here. I'm hearing y'all talk about weather, and I had 42 the other day and thought it was really cold as a low, that is, and that was cold for this time of year. But we haven't gone through that part of the year. And as I said earlier, this disease that's involved with our citrus industry has been and led to its greatest demise in the history of the industry, and that's the greening bacteria. Does that create more stress in these plants that we haven't yet seen? I can tell you, come about 6 to 8 months from now, we'll have a lot better idea. When it comes to the product itself, will it be compromised in regard to quantity? Yes. Will it be compromised in regard to quality? I can say almost for certain that's a fact as well. So that does have an adverse effect on whether the availability of orange juice, and it's supply and demand market. If the demand is low or supply is low and demand remains the same, we know the price goes up. But we're in foreign competition in this industry, and a lot of that is what we're competing against, whether it be Brazil or our name competition. We'll see.
Okay. Well, Jeb, hang with us. We have a quick break to take, and when we come back, we've got tons more questions for Jeb Smith. He's the president of the Florida Farm Bureau. If you have any questions for Jeb as well, feel free to give us a call, 701-293-9000, or you can email us, weather@flagfamily.com or ag@flagfamily.com. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Save now on premium mattresses, pillows, bases, and linens at Accord Comfort Sleep Systems directly across from Olive Garden. Find the best mattress design and construction with our exclusive technologies such as our Accord Comfort Reflex Layer, ensuring proper spinal alignment. Our Thermodyne climate control fabric is perfect for the couple sleeping hot and cold. Buy today and take it home today, or free delivery in the FM metro area. Accord Comfort Sleep Systems. You're going to love sleeping with us.
There are a million reasons to love a pet, and a million more to love a shelter pet. During the month of October, Muscatel Subaru has teamed up with Homeward Animal Shelter of Fargo to find forever homes for shelter pets by donating $100 each day of the month toward pet adoption fees. Having Muscatel Subaru help with adoption fees makes this a great time to consider adopting a four-legged companion. Go to homewardonline.org to see available pets and to make an appointment today.
When the weather cooperates here in the valley, our instinct is to race outdoors and work on that honey-do list. As you mow the lawn, you notice that your steps have shifted, the driveway is beginning to crack, and your new addition is sinking. Hi, Gus here with Precision Concrete Cutters and Ramjack North. Whether it's polymjacking or piers, we have a solution. Call us at 701-280-7038. That's 280-7038.
What do you tell folks when they ask who your insurance agent is and why?
DJ's great. His practice has been not just an insurance agent, but also there's a friendship there. They are very open about their communications with their clients. They want to do everything they can to help their clients. I've got multiple policies with him: auto, home, life insurance, an umbrella policy. anything and everything you need insurance-wise you can get from DJ Coulter Insurance.
DJ Coulter, American Family Insurance, 235-6641, djcoulter.com.
This is former State Senator Curtis Olofson. I'm running to return to the Senate in the new District 10 in South Fargo. My number one priority is to get back on the Senate Judiciary Committee, where I previously served for 6 years as vice chair, so that I can take action to address the ever-increasing rate of crime in our city and state. I'm also committed to helping working families access quality child care and supporting our state economy. Vote for Experience on November 8th. Vote Olofson for District 10 State Senate.
Paid for by District 10 Republicans, Curtis Olofson, Chair.
Busch Light Apple is back for 2022. It's not a cider. It's actually a beer that tastes like apple and goes down smooth.
It's been a popular seasonal beer the last 2 years, coming out with the apple harvest, and this is the third and final year they'll produce this beer. So if you've not tasted it, this year is your last chance. And if you liked it last year, then you better get to the liquor store before they're gone. Clear, crisp, light beer in the red apple colored can.
Find it in your neighborhood liquor store and take it home to your backyard or the lake. Busch Light Apple, get it now.
Hi, my name is Rohith, and I'm a junior at Fargo South. I moved here with my parents at an early age, and I plan to study civil engineering in college. The reason I'm so hopeful about my future is Legacy Children's Foundation. I want to thank the amazing donors who are complete strangers to me. I am amazed by their generosity. Because of them, Legacy Youth receives resources and positive relationships to become educated leaders. Find out more at LegacyChildren'sFoundation.com.
Hi, I'm Kathy Scraw. Hopefully you've seen me at your door or community this campaign. I believe that as a legislator, my most important job is to listen. Being a good legislator is about having a relationship with everyone. It's why I've served on the Agriculture and Human Services committees, because there we address the issues that matter the most to our farmers, parents, workers, and business owners. Send me back to Bismarck this November, and you'll continue to have a leader who listens and a servant of the people.
Paid for by Kathy Scraw Victory Campaign.
Welcome back to WDAY Weather and Ag in Focus. I am so glad that you are joining us today. Myself, I'm Bridgette Readel, Ag Director, along with Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, and we have the great pleasure of visiting today with Jeb Smith. He is the president of the Florida Farm Bureau, and he is helping us walk through what's been going on since Hurricane Ian took a pretty big shot at most of the agriculture in Florida. For those of you listening, if you'd like to ask questions, please call us at 701-293-9000, or you can email us weather or ag@flagfamily.com. Jeb, I've made a pile of notes while you were talking in our last segment, and there's so many different pieces of agriculture in Florida. First comes to mind is citrus. I often mention beef production in your state, but you brought up some that I want to go back to. For one, beekeeping, apiary. You mentioned that an awful lot of their environment has been destroyed or at least damaged. What's going to happen? Are they moving bees out of state in order to give them a better place to spend the winter? What's your plan there? Any idea?
Well, some of them are supplemental feeding as well if they can get to them, and there was a little bit of time before they could even get to some of those bees. So they couldn't move them. Some of the infrastructure was compromised enough in some of southwest Florida to where a lot of those guys weren't able to get in and move those hives. So they did try to keep them alive by bringing them supplemental feed. There will have to be some moving. A lot of those hives will be moved. Colonies will be moved out of the area and into other areas and parts of the state to be able to tend to them and hopefully be able to provide them enough forage to where they can sustain their own population. Some of them are completely destroyed. The winds destroyed them, destroyed a lot of that property. And as I said, a lot of those guys couldn't get into some of their sites just because of compromise of roads and infrastructure. So that's why they were hit so very, very hard, and them specifically.
Wow. Okay, so let's go on to the next one I made notes about. And you mentioned cut foliage, which can I just describe as fresh flowers? Would that be fair?
A lot of it's not necessarily that's a word. Fresh flowers. Most of it be mostly greenery. A lot of it is greenery, a lot of fern, and other there's a long list of them, but some of them, a lot of folks may not, they may recognize it, but not recognize the name. They may recognize it in a form, whether it be in a greenery at a wedding or a funeral. A lot of that's grown here in the state of Florida. And but the big thing is that a lot of that shade cloth that they're needful for producing a quality crop was compromised. It was torn. It was destroyed. And because of that, some of that crop is not going to be forthcoming for the rest of the year. And it's just going to be next year before they can actually get a good quality crop off. And I'll also mention this too. We have what we call there's a cups system for citrus to protect them from the Asian psyllid, which is the vectoring they actually transmit the disease, the bacteria that's been so detrimental to our citrus. They're a shade cloth facility as well, and a lot of that was compromised. So a lot of the wind damage was definitely to a lot of structures, and especially those whether it's cut foliage, the citrus, or even some of our plant nurseries, which is really big here in the state of Florida.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are more things that come out of Florida than many of us realize, and due to your weather, you definitely supplement our diets here in the north when we get to our our winter months, and we really can't produce some of the things that we like to see best out of you. So, as well as aquaculture, I'm a bit of a fan of fish. No doubt beef's one of my top favorites, but you mentioned that there was power outages and so forth, and that damaged structure within the aquaculture system. So that would have led to major fish kills, I would imagine. So now you're going to be behind in production of some of those favorite breeds of fish that we might be looking for?
You know, and actually probably our biggest part of the industry is not necessarily eating fish, not fish for consumption. A lot of it's tropical or ornamental. Tropical fish is a huge industry here in the state of Florida. And a lot of them didn't just die as a result of fish kills. Some of them were actually because of the stress on them for lack of feed or oxygen for a certain period of time. Some of them were diseased and compromised. So it wasn't necessarily a kill off. Some of those were able to be salvaged. You know, as I say, a lot of times it's not just food and fiber here in the state of Florida. There's a lot of ornamental, a lot of foliage and other things that go along in our industry. You know, the state of Florida produces over 300 commodities that statewide, and only we have 67 counties here in the state, and only 24 were declared a federal disaster. So it wasn't the entire state, and I think that needs to be noted as well.
And Jeb, what about the fertilizer industry near Tampa? Was that affected at all? Or did the system pass far enough south where it really wasn't impacted as much?
That's a good question, and you know we're a big supplier of phosphate in the country as well as the world here in the state of Florida. A lot of it's mined down in South Central Florida, Central Florida, and Mosaic is probably one of the bigger providers of that, one of the bigger producers of phosphate, miners of phosphate. From what I've read and understood, and what my son was down there on a Mosaic property 2 weeks ago, said that the damage was moderate. So it was a little bit further south, the wind and the flooding that would have been more devastating to the fertilizer industry. You know, it didn't come in at Tampa. It came in a little bit further south down around Fort Myers. So if it had come in at Tampa, it would have been very devastating to there'd been a lot more damage that could have been done to the fertilizer industry.
Yeah, I would agree. I've heard that as well from a release from Mosaic saying that they believe that they were spared for the most part. And as long as power was able to remain stable, they could go back into their production pretty quickly, was the hope, which is a great thing because, again, as you just mentioned, Jeb, the country and the world really relies on a lot of what Mosaic does coming right out of your state. That's a big help.
I tell you, MPK, that's number 2.
You've got that right. You know, with all of the water that fell, because you were talking about anywhere from 4 inches to 20, depending on where someone might be located, has most of that drained off? What's your soil saturation look like right now?
Well, what the soil saturation, it depends on where you are, and it depends on the where you are in regard to the river system. So, you know, we've had different systems that have been inundated with water at certain points. Some of them much more upstream, so the effects are still ongoing. Lake Okeechobee is a big one, and it had a lot of water that had come in from the north that goes south. They're still having some control decisions that need to be made, whether to pull water off to release the dikes or not, or to hold it. And some of those have some very serious consequences for populations and residents, but also for agriculture itself. The Caloosahatchee River too had some peak in it. The Peace River had some peak in it. Some pastures and throughout the state have been inundated with water and have not subsided enough to even feed their cattle, so they're still supplemental feeding with hay. Some of those cattle have been moved, but there's a limited place where you can take them and put them. So it depends on where you are, and it depends on where that water fell and its effect on the system itself, which I can tell you through Irma, it was very interesting that, I didn't experience any flooding when Irma came through in 2017 until 24 hours later. So it just depends on where you are. The storm had passed, but then the floods came as a result of some of that inundation that was away from me and my farm. And it's the same thing here and with Ian as well, that some of that has not been felt or until later, and some of that's still subsiding.
Well, last question from me, Jeb, and that has to do with some of the wildlife. Have they moved into new locations and areas with some of the flooding? Is there, I know there's some stories about the pythons in the swamp. Are they suddenly looking for new homes after all that rainfall?
I tell you what, Florida's gotten known for their snakes, and it's pretty interesting. So, with our subtropical environment, we are home to a lot of invasives, that's for sure. I can tell you this, I have sod on my place, and it was not favorable to a mole cricket. I can tell you, that poor mole crickets, they suffered loss. But other wildlife, we have seen some damage and some moving. They're able to adapt really well. A lot of them are. I have not heard of any really radical changes in regard to migration or anything along those lines. So we did have some, always interesting to look at when you have a storm surge like we do, where saltwater species end up in some untoward places. But when you have a shark in downtown or whatever that is, that's pretty interesting. But that's just part of living on the coast, and it's part of living in Florida. That's who we are. And I can tell you, Florida farmers too are resilient. They're able to adapt and overcome. And I think that's just part of our nature and a part of living here in a state where, we have to deal with hurricanes. Now, is it a pleasurable thing? No, absolutely not. And it does have some adverse repercussions on some of our producers and some of our production that our nation needs. But I can tell you, we'll adapt and come through it.
And Jeb, will the damage from the hurricane, will it impact the 2023 crop, or only what was to be harvested in this year in 2022?
That's a good question, especially with the diversity that we have, Dean, is because we've got perennial crops, we have annual crops. And then the interesting thing is some of our perennial crops are hurt. They're not completely destroyed. There's some damage, and that those are citrus, some of our cut foliage industry, some of the trees. We grow a lot of trees here in the state of Florida, especially for residential use. I tell you, our forestry industry had very little damage from this one. Michael, a few years ago, had extreme damage on our forestry industry. So perennial crops, there's going to be some damage that'll have some long-term effects, mainly and specifically the citrus industry. But as I said earlier, they have been suffering for a long time, and the additional stress is something we don't know what that effect is. Somebody today could tell you and be emphatic about it, but I can tell you that you can't trust that today. I think we won't know for some time what that long-term effect is. Annuals are a different story, and annual crops here in the state of Florida, we live and die by, especially in the vegetable and fruit and vegetable industry. Strawberries were delayed a little bit. There weren't a lot of them planted, and that's a huge crop down in the Hillsborough County area. They did suffer a little bit of infrastructural damage, but that's been taken care of pretty expeditiously. We've got some crops that have been delayed in planting. Some sugar cane was delayed by a couple of weeks, but that could be made up with some warm weather going through the winter, and that could be made up very quickly. A couple of weeks can go very fast. Some had some loss. I know some replanting that's been done on some vegetable crops, and some loss on some maturing crops that will set back a special market window. But nothing I would say that's extremely devastating to an entire industry. One thing about the vegetable industry, and y'all may be able to relate, is that oftentimes one person's loss is another person's gain, especially in vegetables. So, one guy down the road could lose a crop, and then up the road he can make a little bit of money because it's unfortunately the demand's there and the supply's not, and he can be able to survive and make a little bit of money. There are some vegetable crops here that were hurt, but they'll come through. And I can tell you, especially the way we plant, there's a lot of times one planting may be hurt and damaged, but others are going to be able to take its place. So the big thing is definitely market window that may have been missed.
Right.
I cannot say thank you enough. Jeb Smith is the president of Florida Farm Bureau. We have truly enjoyed your update of what's been happening in Florida agriculture after Hurricane Ian. Thank you for joining our show today. We really appreciate it.
Thank y'all for the invitation. It's great to be with you. Maybe one day we get to meet face to face.
There you go. Hey,
I bet we will.
Thank you so much. And Jeb, if anybody
classics coming.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions for you, maybe they didn't get to ask, is there a easy way to get a hold of you if anybody has any questions for you?
Sure. You can email me at jeb.smith@ffbf.org, and I'll be glad to take any questions you might have.
Excellent.
That'd be awesome. So thank you again, Jeb, for joining us. Folks, we're going to get an update from the American Ag Network, and we'll be back right after this.
Get more than just a great deal. Get the Luther Advantage. Every pre-owned vehicle comes with a 60-day, 2,500-mile warranty. Every pre-owned vehicle comes with a 5-day, 500-mile return policy. Use your Luther Advantage card and save on gas, or even a car wash at any Holiday Station store. Get the Luther Advantage at Luther Family Buick GMC, corner of I-29 and 32nd Avenue South in Fargo.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wolf, president of Laney's. Are you considering replacing your furnace this winter? If so, you need to consider Laney's, the only company in town that offers a lifetime guarantee. Our guarantee states that if anything ever goes wrong with your furnace, Laney's will fix it for free. Day or night, no cost to you. That's Laney's legendary lifetime guarantee.
Annual check and service required. Call Laney's today for more details at 237-0543.
Attention North Dakota farmers. When asked if he supported federal crop insurance, Rick Becker, candidate for the U.S. Senate, said,
"No, I don't support any federal insurance."
It's clear that Rick Becker doesn't understand the importance of federal crop insurance to farmers and ranchers. Without federal crop insurance, North Dakota would be just one natural disaster away from wiping out our ag economy. It is also clear that Rick Becker has little respect for our farmers and ranchers.
The American farmer was the epitome of a rugged individual that was on their own, that made their way, and they've become barely anything more than a tool of the federal government.
Rick Becker will end federal crop insurance, and North Dakota farm families will pay the price.
North Dakota Strong, paid for and is responsible for the content of this advertising, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. Learn more at northdakotastrong.org.
Soybeans led the grains lower today. For the American Ag Network, I'm Richard Risfeld with this closing market. Not much change in the past few hours, with soybeans, meal, and wheat leading the downside trading action. Bean oil did recover a bit, but markets were still down, likely pressured by slow sales and shipments in corn and wheat. However, we did see a monster export inspection of over 106 million bushels of soybeans last week. Some moisture reserves are being replaced in both the southern and northern plains wheat area, with showers projected to move east over the next few days. Cattle futures trade at 7-year highs, and another strong day following Friday's neutral USDA cattle on feed report, with last week's slaughter totals the third largest of the year as packers produced product for the holidays. Lean hogs, however, they gave back a bit of last week's big gains in some profit taking, while the bit of recovery in wheat allowed corn prices to erase some of their losses. The 20th meeting of Congress of the Chinese Communist Party ended this weekend with some drama designed to send a clear message to the world. President Xi Jinping is in charge, and with China's zero COVID policy being reinforced over the past week, that does suggest that China's economic problems are far from over, leading to questions about its demand for commodities going forward, and that was a factor in the weakness we saw in the commodity markets overnight. Let's take a look at the closing commodity numbers. December corn down 2 3/4 at 681.5. Beans November down 23.5 at 13.72. Bean meal December down 9.20 a ton at 408.70. Bean oil December up 37 at 71.87. Wheat Chicago December down 12 at 8.38 3/4. Kansas City December down 10 1/4 at 9.38. And the Minneapolis December wheat, that is down 5 3/4 at 9.55 3/4. Live cattle October up 112 at 151.60. Feeders October up 40 at 175.67. And the December lean hogs, they are down $1.20 at 87.92. The dollar sits at 111.9, and crude oil is trading down about a half a buck at just over $84 a barrel. For the American Ag Network, I'm Richard Ristvedt.
And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Again, thank you for joining us today. And let's cover real quickly national weather. Obviously, the big storm system that's kind of anchored over our area. It's actually in two pieces, one over North Dakota, and there's another one entering the southern plains. That's going to give a lot of rain to areas that need it. Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, all areas in bad drought conditions down there. And they are going to get hit with a nice soaking rain from this. And keep in mind, this is part of the LRC cycle. This same system will cycle back a few times during the winter. We don't know when yet. We will know, and when we do, when we figure out what the cycle length of the LRC is, we can pinpoint almost to the day of when this same system will cycle back through. Will it cycle back through the same? It'll cycle back through similar, but the question is, will it be on the dry side? Hopefully not. Hopefully when this cycles through the next time, it takes a slightly different trajectory and we get a little more moisture pulled up into our area. But we're kind of chilly for the most part, and we're going to stay that way for today. And other than that, the nation as a whole, it's pretty quiet. The snow out in the western part of the state, again, I've picked up a few inches, some slippery travel out there. About a foot or 2 feet of snow in the Rockies. Great news for them. So this is their first big snow of the season out there. Let's add to that snowpack out there. But other than that, the nation as a whole, pretty darn quiet, with the exception of this storm system here in the midsection of the country. Bridgette?
I think that's all right. We're going to look to see weather fall where we need it, and that's what we're all looking forward to. So glad to see that.
That's right. And I put an article on our Weather and Ag in Focus Facebook page. I wrote an article about this year compared to last year's LRC, and how much time do we have to turn this around before we have to start worrying about drought conditions even getting worse as we head into not only the winter, but next spring and summer. So I wrote an article on that, and we'll be updating that again throughout the next couple of weeks as well.
Well, let's be honest, there will be a lot of questions over the next couple 3 weeks if we do not see more rainfall for much of our area.
Right.
And that will make that will weigh into folks' decision-making process as they think about what am I going to plant, when am I going to plant, that type of thing.
Right. And as I was talking with Gary over the weekend, he's like, let's not press the panic button just yet. Let's wait and see over the next 3 weeks how this pans out. No need to panic just yet. We're only about 3 weeks into the LRC, so.
Right. And I'm going to suggest another reason not to panic. Let's still celebrate the fact that it's October and it's National Pork Month. Maybe not everybody else is a fan of that, but the world really can't get enough pork. It is the most widely consumed animal protein on the planet. Comes in at just shy of 240 billion pounds annually. So think about that. That outdistance chicken and almost double of what beef is, just on a global basis.
That kind of surprises me. It really does. I thought beef would be number one.
Think about some pretty major sized countries that they don't have a lot of beef production. China, much more heavily into pork and chicken. India, they don't eat beef, much more into pork and chicken.
Good point.
And oftentimes it's easier to raise your own chicken flock or a couple of hogs than it is to have a cow.
That's
Unlike
true.
yourself, Dean, who's always got a cow on hand, right?
Always. And now, Bridgette, Ukraine has been, their export levels are returning to pre-war levels, I just read.
I've got to tell you, I'm a little surprised at that. We know that back in July that the UN worked with Russia, Ukraine, and Turkey in order to try to get some exports to the country of Turkey coming out of Ukraine. I was very skeptical that it was going to continue. So far, so good. We are seeing those levels to be similar to what they were a year ago. They're not very far off. That's important to global food supply because it means that the countries that need that product the most are going to be getting it. This deal is set to expire in November. We'll see if it's extended or if something else is further negotiated. The big chunk of the farmland in Ukraine is still being controlled by Russia. If the war continues or ends, how will that affect that production? We don't quite know that answer yet, but those are things that are going on over there right now.
And what's this about American losing by 2040?
Well, we're losing farmland, and that's what it comes down to, is due to what we have, whether you call it urban sprawl or just runaway, where folks are leaving production agriculture and it's becoming ranchettes, that type of thing. At the current trajectory, we're estimated to lose 18 million acres of production by the year 2040. So if you had a kid today, Dean, if you had a new baby like Justin does,
No. Done with that.
When that baby graduates from high school in 2040, you would now have, that's how many acres of farmland you'll be out, is 18 million.
Wow.
And in that time frame, the population growth is not slowing down. So even though we're very, very efficient, as we said earlier, here in the U.S., we prepare about 18% of the world's beef with 6% of the animals. We just know that we have to keep up, and we're not doing it really great yet. So those are headlines for today.
Gotcha. Well, and you know what? That just about wraps it up for today. We're about out of time here. We want to thank you for joining us. If there's something you had on your mind, you just didn't get a chance to call in or ask, feel free to email us, weather@flagfamily.com or ag@flagfamily.com. For Bridgette and myself, once again, we want to thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Stay tuned for the Jay Thomas Show. He's coming up next, and we will see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock for Weather and Ag in Focus. Have a great day.
970 WDAY AM.